Welcome everybody to the November webinar for the ASCILITE TELedvisors network. Today we have Professor Michael Sankey from Charles Darwin University and Jack Sage from James Cook University talking about some work they've been doing on pathways to learning design. Is it skill? Is it luck? What else is going on in that space? I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and also pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people we have with us today. So in terms of this session, we'll kick off with Michael and Jack. Michael's going to tell us a little bit about a scheme that was proposed, being discussed in the ASCILITE bulletin the other day, and we'll wrap up with a slow chat. So have an opportunity for everyone to sort of respond to a few questions. So I'm going to hand over now to Michael. Over to you.
Jack and I first met through the ASCILITE community mentoring program. We started that at the beginning of this year. I've been a mentor in the online program for many years, but this year I met Jack for the first time from James Cook University, who's been working up there, primarily working with students and sharing his experience across a number of different higher education institutions around the world. Worked in Japan and in Europe and things like that, and now finds himself in Australia. And we've enjoyed the last year. Part of the role that Jack plays obviously is student focused in terms of working to provide support to students in relation to their careers, what they're doing in their studies and things like that. But he's always had this desire to get into educational design, learning design. And so one of the questions he posed to me was, how do I get into learning and instructional design? Is it something that, how's it happen? And so we spent a couple of weeks talking about this and how I made my transition into learning design, and then there are lots of different experiences around the shop, and we need to look at what are some of the different pathways into learning design. So to help Jack make this transition that he wants to make. Part of that, of course, was Jack doing a range of different professional development opportunities through the Deakin online course, and he's done the OLC the OLC course and things like that. And that was, and now fortunately he's scored a job as a learning designer with KeyPath, which is absolutely fantastic. And so, in a sense, we reached the goal. That initial goal we were looking at was how we get Jack into this profession. And so we're going to let's move on to the next slide. Well, what also I'm going to talk about is what we did, what we found, and what we do. So here we go. We started with that community mentoring program, and so we find ourselves having made this kind of some discoveries. What were the prospects for learning design positions? And so we found 12.9. When we did a sector scan, we found that there would be potentially a 12.9 increase in job openings happening in the instructional design type, the broad category of instructional design, which includes learning design, educational design, over the next 5 years. Well, that looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? 12.9% growth over 5 years. Well, that's fine, and that is really exciting for us as educational designers. But we do find that there's a dearth of quality information around how people do transition into this role. So you told us this in the survey we did with you. So we had 92 people respond to this survey and found that it's very hard to find a pathway in. So we did a semi-structured qualitative study, and as I said, had 92 respondents to that, and I'm so thankful for you guys being able to respond to this survey. And we sought your advice. There were 12 questions looking at your level of education, gender, you know, the other qualifications you had, the length of tenure in your particular roles, and the different pathways that you had coming into this. And so we did get ethics clearance for this through Charles Darwin University. And what I'd like to do is throw over to Jack to talk us through some of the results that we came up with.
All right, thank you, Michael, for this intro. I hope everyone can hear me. Please let us know if you struggle with hearing me, because I've had some reports today that my mic is not picking my voice very well today. So please let me know if I need to speak louder. So anyway, back to the results. So the first line is not really surprising. This is representative of I suppose the makeup of the higher education in Australia. What we found really interesting was that 70% of our respondents had no more than 10 years experience in learning design, and the rest were veterans. So the remaining 30% had more than 10 years experience. Could be anything, anywhere between 11 and 25 and whatnot. And so it was really interesting to see that the profession seems to have perhaps something that you could call a healthy pipeline, because there is about 20 to 30% of each kind of demographic group, experience group, from 0 to 1, from 2 to 5 years, and from 6 to 10 years, and then over 10 years. So so there's a lot of people in different stages of their learning design career. It's not like, you know, every position is occupied by veterans or by the beginners or something like that. What was interesting, and this is what we used to kind of stir a bit of a controversy in the invitation, is that the majority of people who responded to our survey actually had experience in some shape or form in education previously to assuming a learning design role. And the feedback that we got from them is that they feel that that has given them the clout and the gravitas in conversing with academics and other teachers, because they can share the pain of certain learning design experiences, and basically they know what sort of challenges the teachers have. But hopefully we'll have a bit of a heated discussion at the end of the presentation about this point, as we had some contributions to the post on the blog. The other finding was that about 80% of the participants had learning design specific qualification. However, they did not necessarily indicate that it was a deal breaker if in them securing the position. It was much more the experience and the ability to demonstrate the relevant skills to basically the recruitment panel that they can do the job. Another interesting point was that the majority of respondents did not necessarily plan to end up in learning designer or educational designer positions. It was kind of serendipitous. It does confirm what we found out in our review of learning designers' LinkedIn profiles. That was the conclusion that we have found, that everyone's journey is quite different. There is not one single pattern that people follow into this profession. So most people reported that they stumbled upon the position, they didn't know it existed, and that most of them say they love it. It is not without its challenges, but they love it, and these are the most common backgrounds. So other sessional lecturers who were looking for a bit of stability, TAFE subject matters teachers, language teachers, people from the learning and development sector, ended up in higher education, learning design positions, people with film, TV, and multimedia backgrounds. That gives them the strength in the technical side of things. Obviously, teachers. There are people like myself from the higher education student services, the so-called third space. And there's another interesting category of people who ended up in learning design positions, health sector workers. That's usually what we mean by that. It's usually the clinical educators. So for instance, nursing educators. So a nurse with a long career as a nurse who qualified as a nurse educator or something like that. And then they kind of shifted towards learning design in a more general manner. Hopefully you'll be able to contribute to some other backgrounds in the discussion, so please don't hesitate to do that when we open the floor for that. Another piece of information that we've received from the survey is what were the decisive factors in winning that first learning design position. So most people said that their previous jobs would have some elements of learning design. So that was just exactly the skills and transferable aspects that you can claim and discuss in your job interviews. The other strong factor was the education. So some sort of other education, general education degree, or something specific to learning design. Further professional courses, other experiences such as proactively seeking volunteering experiences in learning design, and as I mentioned, specific qualifications in learning design. So we've discussed qualifications specific to learning design. So there's a whole range of them. As you can see, most of people went as far as gaining a Master of Education in Learning or something similar, and further professional training. So it is all relevant. Nothing goes to waste. Even if you started with a primary or secondary teaching degree, that could also be a very legitimate and useful way to get into the profession. So we also asked a number of open-ended questions where we sought participants' input on, what sort of advice would you give to aspiring learning designers? And this is what we found. These are the recurring themes. I just wanted to make a comment that we were really pleased with the responses. Most people shared their thoughts and experiences and advice really, really generously. So if some of you are those who participated in the survey, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for sharing your wisdom so generously. So looking for learning educational design experiences in your current job, which is a very good strategy for any career transition. So if you've got an idea where you want to go, try to find talk to your managers, look around for different projects where you could start developing the skills and the track record of working in that sphere in your current job, wherever possible. Finding a volunteering position that could help you do that, and we'll talk about that in a moment, about the peer-assisted learning design idea. Create a project for yourself. So for instance, review someone else's course and come up with suggestions how to fix it. Or you could even, Udemy, one of those MOOC platforms, allows anyone to get a course. So that could be a way to demonstrate your skills. Another important piece of advice was developing a portfolio, but don't put everything you've got in it. Less is more. make sure that you have someone with the wisdom and experience in learning design to review it, and showcase only the really good stuff that you've got. Another great piece of advice was to the resources that you are confident are really good and useful for others, make them available to other people. That's how you can, share the benefits of your work and get noticed. Another piece of advice that is, I think, really good is reappraising your non-learning design experience. So we tend to dismiss whatever doesn't have the label of learning design, but the reality is that in any type of work, we are likely to be developing skills and experience and confidence that could be quite easily transferred to the learning design works. Here's a couple of examples, such as the soft skills of empathizing, listening, negotiating, influencing, and motivating, which a number of contributors have highlighted as key skills for an effective learning design work when you work with subject matter experts. So in other words, no past experience should be considered irrelevant or waste of time. So rather than dismissing it, look at it again and try to see how it could be used as your weapon, I suppose, in your job interviews. Get involved in mentoring to develop skills and networks, for instance, such networking as the community mentoring program. A relevant specific degree could also be helpful. And effective job applications skills. So in the end, the onus is on you. You have to argue your way into the job. It will probably feel a bit like banging against the wall, banging your head against the wall for a while. But if you keep reflecting on how you do it and seek feedback, you will eventually get there. So what's another piece of advice was how to become a good learning designer. So the well-roundedness, it's not just the technical skills or the pedagogy knowledge and things like that. It's all of the above. So the pedagogy, the design skills, the technical skills, and the soft skills that we've just are really, really, all of them are extremely important to be effective as a learning designer. Trusted, I suppose, position yourself as a trusted advisor and a trainer. So your role is not just to provide the service, but also help academics and other subject matter experts become better at this part of their job. The reality is that we usually work at capacity in whatever we're doing, and we can't just respond to every service request. So we really need to teach people how to do some of our job. So, and they'll gladly do that. That will give them more independence. The other really, really useful, I thought, a piece of advice was, and recurring, don't take the different requests from SMEs at a face value. Try to investigate a little bit more why they want it. And what really matters to them, so you can work with that and figure out what is driving their request. And sometimes, and this is something that we learn from working with students in the third spaces, the students sometimes ask one thing, but if you start poking around and try to investigate a bit more, it is actually not very well worded request for something quite different. So in that way, it's similar. The other aspect was to never forget that to put yourself in the shoes of a student. So keep your professional development and seek experiences as a learner, so you know what's it like and to be a learner and what are the pain points and things like that. And I suppose a piece of advice that is relevant to any work: avoid perfectionism. Good enough is good enough, and make sure that next time you just reflect on the work and improve it. Otherwise, you'll never be able to submit it on time. As I mentioned, most people said they love the job, and they kind of drifted into it, and they said, I wish I could find about it more early, and I could start working in this capacity earlier. So yes, so these are, I suppose, these are the things that people would have liked to see in the reality outside to help them land those jobs earlier. And we're making a number of recommendations in the paper at the conference. So please make sure that you follow up this on this webinar and read our paper, or perhaps listen to our presentation at the ASCILITE conference next week. So perhaps now it's the time.
And of course, we had the TEL blog post come out last Monday as well. So
absolutely.
That gives you, yeah. So guys, look, we've got some questions here. Some of you might not have done the survey, and might not have even seen the survey come out. So let's see, and there's been some fantastic chat going along as well. So which will answer some of these questions. But how's that sound? Does it ring true for you, what we've been talking through? What strategies did you use to get into learning or educational design? Let's open up the mic for those who would like to say something. Raise your hand and we can give you the mic. Of course, the chat's happening as well. Do you see other pathways into educational design?
Now, Colin, is everyone allowed in the settings to use the mic, or do we?
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is how you feel as a teacher when you say feedback, students, and no one puts up there.
One of the reasons we like the idea of a slow chat is I think there might be too many questions at one time. Well, so we could try and just break this up maybe into small chunks.
Of course, we did have animations on this, would have only brought up one question at a time. So because we're having to present it this way, we're seeing all the questions. So.
Yeah, perhaps if people just want to speak to the first couple of questions.
Yeah.
I'm happy to speak.
Yep. Who's this?
Yeah, it's Vibra Cat.
Yep.
I won't put on my video only because it says it wants to put on a snap filter, and that makes me nervous that I'll come up as a cat or something. No, the one that I was going to talk to was the one about barriers, because years and years ago, I'd worked in all forms of education, both as a secondary school teacher, but also in publishing, all sorts of things. And the biggest barrier was universities only willing to hire people that already had university experience. So I applied for so many universities with all my transferable skills, but they all said, well, you haven't worked at a uni before. And it used to drive me nuts. So I suppose one of the ways that I found to get in was to pair with one of those businesses that partners with unis. So nowadays the key paths and the OESs, which were then called Swinburne Online, but the businesses that partner with unis, because you know, it's like a first step in the back door, because unis kept saying no. Yeah, so that was my experience.
Yep.
Thank you for that. That's very valuable contribution, and I must testify having a similar experience. I've been in the university sector for a while, but each time you're trying to make a transition to another sector that it's not easy.
Yeah,
I feel you.
I have a question. I mean, like that follows through from what Vibra told. So it's not that disappointing because if you are in university, if you apply for other agencies such as KPAT, they will say, nah, because their approach is more of what they want is, okay, we have this project with certain university, we have to get things done. These are the kind of multimedia that we have to produce rather than actual learning design. So I think issue is understanding learning design and bringing the thinking of all the people in this area to a common understanding of what learning design is. That is the key, because if you go for and I have that experience, if you go for a government job of learning design and they will ask you, you know, such and such software, and I said, I am a designer, I design strategy, they will say, nah, that's not what we want. So I think bigger issue is to bring the community to a common understanding of what learning design is.
I think one of the challenges we will face in that space is that different institutions will have different, they will see learning design in very different ways. And so University A will be like, we just want you to be building H5P activities, and that's what our learning design team does. And University B needs curriculum developers or something like that. So I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to a universal definition because it is going to be contextual. But I do agree that there's definitely a need for better understanding of what we do in this space.
Yeah, but there is definitely a difference between multimedia developer and learning designer, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a colleague of mine who's in a private provider emailed me yesterday because they want to employ a learning designer with some skills in LMS, and he was asking me, well, what do I call this person? What do I advertise for? I mean, and then she gave me a list of about 6 or 7 different titles that she could give this position, and I think that's part of the issue we face, because we're all calling these positions different things. When I was at USU back in the day, it was instructional designer. Then it became what was it? Went through about 3 or 4 different names. When I get to Griffith, it was educational designer. Now I'm at CDU. It's digital learning designer. So there's a whole range of different. We haven't really given it a taxonomy and around this. So I think that if we could contribute something back into the sector, it would be around this taxonomy of what the different
Exactly. Yeah,
tools, what the different skills are associated with these different positions.
Yep.
I have a question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
How do we actually get leaders in universities to listen, to sign on to a common taxonomy of language?
Okay, we do that via publication, basically, and by getting the professional associations to get behind that. So, one ACODE, which I also represent, do the white papers around what we're doing with assessment, what we're doing with micro-credentials and things like that. And they're the types of things that our leaders are looking for, these kind of published things that give them something to hold on to. And then it's a matter of us within our institutions, rising those things up. So once they are out in the public domain, rising them up through our PVCs and DVCs to populate that idea. Of course, those who advertise have their own ideas, but if they can see that these ideas are based on something to hold on to, I think there's a potential way forward there. I mean, potentially I could see a joint white paper from ASCILITE and ACODE coming out in relation to the names and this taxonomy that could happen for us.
I just wanted to mention that in response to Colleen's question, is that in the bibliography, the literature attached to our conference paper, there is a number of entries that from the last perhaps 5 years where the part of this issue has been addressed. So obviously people are aware of this taxonomy problem within learning design and associated roles, and there is a number of papers that have attempted to address it, and they're actually quite good. So
that's right.
Please check our paper.
Yes.
Just Alex. Hi, thanks, Kate. Just a comment on the barriers. So I've worked in various sectors in learning design, so private sector, university sector, and obviously what we're discussing here seems to be a lot more skewed around the tertiary or TAFE sector, not so much corporate or instructional design. And in that sense, I feel, well, from my experience, like learning designers in the tertiary sector need an additional extra level of skills. And for that reason, I've found it extremely beneficial to have that sort of background before even going into learning design principles, having educational principles background, feedback, assessment, like the core things before even going into learning design and how to apply that. And in that sense, I feel that there's a very big role here for each university's education departments, if you like. Most universities have an education department, to lead the way in creating those short courses or longer courses that bridge the gap between the sort of a qualification in education and a qualification in learning design, so that it's more sort of targeted towards people who want to work in a sector that is arguably growing. However, what I'm seeing is that the difficulty there is that in most education departments in a university, that's where the lack of understanding around learning design roles and how that can be sort of is connected to what a lot of the time some academics do anyway. And so I think there's a bit of a conundrum where we need the education departments to actually take some action and create some qualifications that are targeting in this sense, but at the same time, the education departments don't seem prepared or in a position to do so.
Sorry, Alex, just a very quick question on that. Are you talking about education faculties or units that are responsible for learning and teaching? Okay, so education faculties.
So say if you wanted to create a qualification in learning design, you would have to partner with a faculty, and the logical one would be whichever education faculty exists in the university. In some universities it comes in different forms, but in most universities it would be a faculty that has a sort of a education focus. Yeah.
If it's to be an accredited course in most cases. I mean, at Griffith we had our Learning Futures department was classified as an academic unit, so we could accredit courses in our own right, but that's not the case at CDU. If we want to do that, we'd have to do it through the education faculty. So it depends what level of accreditation that group is being given. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, even at Griffith, I must say, even though we were an accredited academic unit, we came under the umbrella of the education school. So, yeah.
So I just wanted to make a point. I remember at Melbourne Uni, there's this Melbourne Certificate. Please correct me, Kate, if I'm twisting it. And it's all about kind of teaching at the university. It's really good. But it didn't really go into the learning design as in a specific way, even though it covered a number of aspects of learning design, I suppose, in a non-explicit manner. However, there are currently new qualifications and new attempts that Kate again has mentioned that are trying to perhaps somewhat address this gap, and that's probably these micro credentials that people can access, throughout the year, they go for 6 weeks, and you get a micro credential depending on the kind of type of skill that you're looking for. So that could be a way to address that. So kudos for UTS for identifying the gap and doing something about it.
Well, it's a whole course that has a micro credential as a feeder into the course. So there is actually a qualification, like an actual course.
Grad set, yeah.
Yeah, the grad, yeah. So and yeah, I know VU's got one. There's been other ones pop up around the place in the past, and then there's, I guess, similar ones like for a while there, back in the day, there was like a bit of a spate around educational technology courses popping up. Like I know Swinburne had one at one point. This was a few years back now, but and now learning design seems to be a bit more of a thing. So and those are popping up obviously because there's a bit more demand or growth. So but yeah, it's I was interested to see what you kind of classified as specific and in terms of instructional design or learning design specific, in that a lot of them seem to be, I guess, more education general rather than the same as, I guess, UTS or the US, which have a lot of those specific courses.
I think the learning design grad certificates are quite heavily concentrating on the kind of digital and online delivery. Yeah. So that could be the difference between general education qualifications and those qualifications.
Yes, we have a couple of staff doing the QT online course, and that's going particularly well. Yeah, Innovative Learning Design course. Good course. Yeah. Not that I'm promoting that over any other, but the Deakin one's been good too. Jack did the Deakin one, which was, went well, didn't it?
I did the feeder course, yes, on Future Learn, and there's actually quite a few really nice little MOOCs that are relevant to learning design. So if anyone is interested, I'd probably look at those.
So it's interesting because the QUT online course is a OPM developed course, so that's an interesting synergy there.
Yeah, indeed.
So I have one more question. Because that, as you have found in your research, and there was a research by Christine Slade about learning designers as a professionals and where they're coming from, what's their background, what's their qualification. Both of them shows that people who comes to learning design are from different areas such as arts, multimedia, web design, education, and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, all the other professionals may or may not have that background of pedagogical understanding and basically knowledge of how people learn and constructive alignment and all those fundamentals of education. How would people of that sort coming into the field of learning design would impact the understanding of learning design?
Yeah, we do see quite a bit of transition across. I mean, my own background was in media, and I did a Master of Education in Higher Education Design, online distance learning, and that's how I got that understanding about pedagogies. But I mean, really, when I first started as an instructional designer back in 2001 or whatever it was, 20 years ago, I mean, I had an understanding, that head knowledge, but I didn't. Looking back now, I was very thankful the director at the time gave me the job, but I didn't have that full understanding. It does take time, and it takes experience, and that comes. But sometimes you do need to take a risk as an employer, and I employ a number of learning designers over the years, many learning designers over the years. Sometimes you have to take a risk. And you may not necessarily have, and be prepared to usher these people into the profession. So, particularly up here in Darwin, we don't get whole lots of people applying for our jobs. We don't have that luxury, but You know, sometimes there are those you can see that there is potential in this and you want to give them a go. And in most cases, we bear fruit. But it does take a bit of patience and a bit of guidance along the way.
Yeah, you eventually did your master's, but not many does. So their ideas are very different.
Yeah, there wasn't many options in my day. There was a master's or nothing. There was no options for me. If I wanted to get into education, instructional design things, which I did, it had to be the master's of education. That was all there was. Didn't have a certain education.
I think this points us to, sorry, go.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, this actually points us to two very interesting questions that have been kind of coming up in discussion. So there's someone typing. If you wouldn't mind muting your microphone if you're not chatting. I think that might be you, Jack. Yeah, so there is this question that has emerged, and you do see this sometimes in the commentary about learning designers who haven't actually taught in university. Why should their advice, why should their input be taken on board? I think I've seen the word gravitas thrown around. And then there's a secondary one about we've got a lot of academics who haven't actually had any educational training either.
Absolutely.
And so I find it interesting that on the one hand, we've got people who haven't been formally trained put into a space where they are doing teaching. And then we've got another space where we've got people who have potentially come from other educational backgrounds or, you know, come in because they've got expertise in multimedia design or something like that. I don't know. I feel like this is possibly one of the biggest barriers in the entire discussion.
Yep.
And there's probably a webinar in that on its own. But I just wanted to flag that.
Can I bounce on that theme that's just been brought up?
Please.
It's as Vibra again. Yeah, with your thought about you know, sometimes there's that whole thing that, you know, a learning designer hasn't taught, so how could they know? And yet some academic staff haven't had educational training, yet they're thrown into it. I think the other interesting thing is that just because someone has 10 years lecturing experience in, you know, let's say computer science, doesn't mean that if they were thrown into arts or fine arts or business, that it would naturally translate. So I think, you know, like, even if a learning designer hasn't lectured themselves, they may have like touched in with a lot of experts in lots of different faculties, if that makes sense. Like, sometimes I feel like being a learning designer is being a sponge of good ideas that you bumped into from people who are specialists in their area, if that makes sense.
I think that's absolutely the case. Yeah, we talk to educators all day and they come to us with specific issues. So I do feel, and look, I do recognise there are some unknowables, but yeah, like the way that we talk to people every day about their experiences, help them solve problems, work together on innovations and everything else, does give us value even without specific classroom teaching. But I'm preaching to the choir.
I suppose I just wanted to add, like, I work as a careers counsellor with academics and embedding, you know, career management skills or professional identity in the curriculum and things like that. And so, say for instance, we have outstanding social work teachers who never worked as social workers, and teachers in management who never have been in managerial positions. So I don't think we can write people off just because they haven't got that teaching experience. But yeah, any other contributions, ideas and stuff?
I'm sorry, my comments may sound tiny bit rude, but we are not talking about like a teaching experience in that particular field. It is about the experience in the area of, so it is basically education, pedagogy, how people learn, that kind of thing. So to give you an idea what I'm saying, so I worked in a School of Medicine, and we had doctors who are fantastic in their own field, and they could operate super well in their, but when they teach, and they taught for many years, and yet they need a lot of intervention in their teaching because they didn't know how to teach. So that's the whole idea, rather than the command over the content or about the experience of how long you have been working in that field. It is about knowing that art of teaching as well as learning and knowing about how people learn, knowing about how what are the constructive alignment, how you achieve the outcome, and things like that.
I think the medical analogy is actually fitting in some ways, because there's probably room for people to be specialists in here. So you could have a learning designer, brackets, specialist, assessment, or brackets, constructive alignment, or brackets, engagement, or I don't know. This is literally just a thought that's popped into my head, and I might just leave it at that.
Colin, you are job opening, the new kind of job opening ideas. That there has to be like that. I think, like a learning designer law, learning designer medicine, like that, and they're very different.
I think there's a number of MOOCs that concentrate exactly on that, like teaching and learning in medicine or in healthcare and so on. So someone is obviously trying to address this. Whether that's enough, we'll have to do those courses to see.
Just mindful of the time, and Michael was keen to also talk about the Powell, which do you prefer?
Well, Powell will do.
Yeah. Powell's like friends, yeah.
That's it. So Powell stands for peer assisted learning design, and it's an idea Jack came up with early on in our mentoring program, and we just tossed around the idea for a while. We talked to some people, the ASCILITE exec. So the concept came from, there's a lot of not-for-profit organisations, Doctors Without Borders, other groups who are volunteer organisations, and they're trying to pull together support sites for their people and design stuff, but they don't have the skills to do so, professional development that they need, things like that. And we thought, well, we've got a whole bunch of learning designers through ASCILITE who may want to contribute some of their time to help these not-for-profits. Now, we're not trying to take away from job opportunities for you guys, because it might actually lead to a job opportunity. But there is a skill that we have that others could benefit from, and it might mean that you could give 1 hour, it might mean you give 5 hours a week to that. And so, what we're asking here is, do you think that's a good idea or not? And so there's a form there, a survey there we've put together that we'd like to seek your input on. We would run this under ASCILITE and link with the two SIGs that are involved in this field, and to see if there is an opportunity for ASCILITE to mediate between the not-for-profits and the community that we would be willing to put up the hand. We see opportunities in this for future mentoring programs. Sometimes in a mentoring program, you're looking for something to do together. It could be a great opportunity for that. It could be a great opportunity if you're trying to break into the learning design profession, to be able to work for one of these not-for-profits to get the experience. So you can say to your potential employer, well, I did this, I designed this for this group of people. So listen, we'd love to hear from you. There's the QR code there, of course, there's the URL there, and there's a little, at the top of the at the top of the form, the Microsoft Office form, there's also a link to the little video here, which I'm not going to play now, but it only goes for a minute to give you that concept. So we'd love to get your input on that. And if it does have legs, and there has already been a number of people, I think last time I checked, there was about 10 or so responses. We haven't really publicised it that well yet.
11.
11, yep, okay. 11 responses so far, people saying, yeah, this is a good idea, but we'd like to get a sense from you guys. If you think that's a good idea, please let us know, and we'll work something out with ASCILITE how to mediate this. So, yeah, that's great. Jack, it was your idea. What do you reckon, mate?
Well, yeah, it'd be great to hear what everyone thinks, and also maybe some people at some stage later on could put their hands up to help run the program if everyone wants it. I just wanted to say the QR code on the left is to the video, and the big QR code on the right takes you straight to the form. It's only a very short form, 12 questions. It won't take you more than like 5 minutes to fill out on your phone, so you can just scan it now and fill it out later if you're interested.
Actually,
but we'd love to.
Just had an idea, Jack. Just had an idea. At the YouTube video, maybe we should put the link to the URL form in the summary. You know, where the description of the video, so people can actually link to the survey from the video as well. Anyway.
Excellent idea.
Thanks.
I'll do it right away.
Yeah. Here we are, designing on the go here. We should have thought of that beforehand. So thanks, guys. Does there anybody have any comments in relation to that? I think it's a good idea.
I just have a question. Because everything that occurs under ASCILITE umbrella has a kind of a clause that they have that those are benefit from only for the ASCILITE members or member institution maybe. So when you say NGOs and other institution, how you are perceiving that to happen under ASCILITE? And also, I'm just thinking, like in the interest of all the participants, like because they will be giving up their time for free, kind of like a free labor around to an institution. What is the practical gain for them to get involved?
Well, it's that experience primarily, and also, particularly for those who want to break into the profession, to give them that experience and get that onto their CVs. They can bring it up. I mean, part of our, I suppose, mandate within education, and particularly for academics, is this notion of service. And this is a great opportunity for those, particularly with the academic label against their educational design, to contribute to service. And it's not just service to the university, it's service to the greater public as well. Now, in terms of this, ASCILITE is simply a mediator. So it's putting itself in the place of saying, look, here's an opportunity. Here are some people who would like to help you with that opportunity, and we're making those linkages. And we do that under the umbrella of ASCILITE. Did I say ASCILITE? Okay, ASCILITE. So we can, again, just be that mediator, not own it as such, but really to provide opportunities for our members to participate in this type of activity.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, I think we've had some discussions sort of in the back channel about this scheme, and I think broadly I certainly see value in it. It would be good to have a discussion offline about some of the operational aspects. So yeah, making sure that people aren't being exploited. What kind of quality standards we're looking at. If we're actually saying these people are learning designers, how do we ensure that they're not delivering garbage product or sort of garbage outcomes? So it would be really good to have a discussion about some of the nuance of how this scheme would work.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely.
As an organisation, yeah.
Yeah, we've had a few of those discussions with the exec, and that they're very real and you're spot on there, Colin. Spot on.
I think bringing the
exactly
practitioner perspective in has some value too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly why we want to mediate it through the ASCILITE network for those who are involved in the network, because they do have this kind of affinity with that. Hopefully we haven't got too many shonky practitioners in ASCILITE, but yeah, that's exactly right. That's why we wanted to give it that kind of oversight.
Fantastic. Anyone else have any final comments? There's certainly a lot of chat. We will be sharing the chat. The recording of this session will be made available in the coming days. Doesn't look like there's, I mean, there's a lot in the chat, but it doesn't look like there's any urgent questions, but I might just make a final call. And if we don't have any other comments or questions, I'd like to thank Michael and Jack for their time. Certainly looking forward to the session at ASCILITE on Monday morning, which I'm opening for. So I'm going to be there regardless. And I guess now that I've seen their presentation, I get to steal all their thunder and put all of their good ideas into my session first. So it's you know, works for me. But no, seriously, thank you. It's been a really good discussion.
Yes, there'll also be, we're also running a Pekachuka on the Powell as well. So on day 2, on the beginning of day 2. So yeah, if you hang around for that.
Lots of fun.
Colin. Lots of fun.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm
See you all
Thanks.
later, guys.
Thanks, Colin, for moderating and everyone for contributions.